The scream of wind against the cabin walls woke Zachary Garrison before the baby's cry did, though later he would swear the infant's wailing had pierced through the blizzard like a gunshot through silence. He bolted upright in bed, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle that leaned against the wall. The Wyoming winter of 1883 had been brutal, but this storm was something else entirely, howling like a wounded animal through the darkness. Then he heard it again, unmistakable this time, a baby crying somewhere close to his door. Zachary threw off his blankets and grabbed his coat, shoving his feet into his boots without bothering to lace them. The temperature inside the cabin had already dropped to near freezing, and he could only imagine what it was like outside. He yanked open the door, and the wind nearly tore it from his hands. Snow blasted into the cabin, stinging his face and eyes. There, on his doorstep, wrapped in blankets that were already dusted white with fresh powder, was a basket. Inside, a baby screamed with lungs far too powerful for something so small. Zachary scooped up the basket and kicked the door shut behind him, his heart hammering. What kind of monster left a baby out in this weather? The infant could not have been more than a few months old, its face red from crying, tiny fists flailing against the frigid air. Zachary set the basket on his table and began unwrapping the layers of cloth, checking for frostbite. The baby seemed all right, just cold and terrified. Then he heard something else, a sound that made his blood run cold. A weak moan, barely audible over the storm. He grabbed a lantern and threw open the door again, holding the light high. At first he saw nothing but white, the snow already beginning to drift against the side of his cabin. Then he spotted her, a figure collapsed in the snow about 20 feet from his door, half buried already. Zachary did not think. He plunged into the storm, the wind trying to push him back with every step. The snow was already past his knees in places, the drifts growing by the minute. He reached the woman and dropped to his knees, brushing snow from her face. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair plastered to her pale skin. Her lips had a bluish tinge that terrified him. He hooked his arms under her shoulders and began dragging her toward the cabin. She was deadweight, unconscious, and every foot felt like a mile. The wind screamed at him to give up, to let the storm have her, but Zachary Garrison was nothing if not stubborn. He had survived 3 years alone on this piece of land outside Cody, Wyoming, and he was not about to let anyone die on his doorstep. By the time he got her inside, his lungs were burning and his fingers had gone numb. He kicked the door shut and barred it, then turned his attention to the woman. The baby was still crying, but it would have to wait another moment. If this woman died of exposure, that child would be an orphan. Zachary dragged her closer to the fireplace and began stripping off her wet clothes. Her dress was soaked through, frozen in places, and her skin was ice cold to the touch. He worked quickly, trying not to think about the impropriety of it all. This was life and death, nothing more. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned, then built up the fire until it roared. Only then did he turn back to the baby. The infant had worked itself into a frenzy, its little face purple with rage and fear. Zachary picked it up awkwardly, having never held a baby in his entire 32 years. The child was surprisingly solid, heavier than it looked and warm despite its ordeal. "Essich," he said, bouncing it the way he had seen women do in town. "Your mama is going to be all right. You hear me? She is going to be fine." He had no idea if that was true, but the baby seemed to respond to his voice, the crying fading to whimpers. Zachary held the infant against his chest and checked on the woman again. Her color seemed a bit better, though she still had not opened her eyes. He pressed his fingers to her throat and felt a pulse, weak but steady. The storm raged on outside, the wind battering the cabin walls. Zachary knew they were trapped here for the duration. The blizzard would have to blow itself out before anyone could go anywhere. He settled into his chair with the baby, who had finally quieted, its eyes drifting shut. Now that the immediate crisis had passed, questions flooded his mind. Who was this woman? Where had she come from? Why had she been out in the storm with a baby? He looked down at the infant in his arms. In the firelight, he could see it was a girl with wisps of dark hair like her mother's. She had stopped crying completely now, her tiny mouth working as if dreaming of milk. That was going to be a problem. Zachary had no milk, no bottle, nothing suitable for feeding a baby. The woman stirred, a small moan escaping her lips. Zachary stood carefully, keeping the baby secure, and knelt beside her. Her eyelids fluttered, and then she was looking up at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, confusion and fear written plainly across her face. "Where?" she whispered, the word barely audible. "You are safe," Zachary said. "You are in my cabin. I found you outside in the storm." Her eyes widened and she tried to sit up, but her body would not cooperate. "My baby," she gasped. "My daughter, I left her at the door. I thought I could not carry her anymore. I thought if I just got to the door." "She is right here," Zachary said, angling so the woman could see the infant in his arms. "She is safe. She is fine." The relief that flooded the woman's face nearly broke his heart. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she reached up with a trembling hand toward her daughter. Zachary knelt lower, letting her touch the baby's face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank God, thank you. What is your name?" Zachary asked gently. "Zara," she said. "Zara Zimmerman, and this is Sarah." "I am Zachary Garrison. This is my cabin about 5 miles outside of Cody. What were you doing out in this storm, Miss Zimmerman? Or is it Mrs.?" Her face crumpled, fresh tears flowing. "It is Miss," she said. "I was traveling to Cody trying to reach my aunt. The stage left me at the last way station, said they could not go on in the storm. I thought I could walk it. I thought I could make it. But then it got so bad and I could not see anything, and Sarah was so heavy. I saw your light and I had to get her to safety. Even if I did not make it, I had to get her safe." Zachary felt something twist in his chest. This woman had been willing to die to save her child, had used her last strength to place the baby where someone might find her. "You are both safe now," he said firmly. "The storm will pass and then we will get you to Cody, to your aunt." Zara nodded weakly. Could I have some water?" Zachary realized he still had the baby in his arms. "I need to give you your daughter," he said. "She is going to be hungry soon." "Are you able to feed her?" Zara's cheeks flushed, but she nodded. Zachary carefully transferred the infant to her mother's arms, then turned his back to give them privacy while he fetched water from the bucket near the door. The storm had not let up at all. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse. They could be trapped here for days. He ladled water into a tin cup and brought it to Zara. She had managed to sit up partially, propped against the pile of blankets, and was nursing the baby. Zachary kept his eyes on her face, handing her the cup. "Thank you," she said, drinking deeply. I do not know how to thank you properly. You saved our lives." "Anyone would have done the same," Zachary said, though he was not sure that was true. Plenty of men would have taken the baby and left the mother to the storm. "Not everyone," Zara said softly, as if reading his thoughts. She looked down at Sarah, who was nursing contentedly. "We have not had the best luck with people lately." Zachary wanted to ask what she meant, but exhaustion was written all over her face. "You should rest," he said instead. "You have been through an ordeal. We can talk more when you are stronger." Zara nodded, her eyelids already drooping. Zachary added more wood to the fire and checked the cabin's supplies. He had plenty of food, enough to last a month if he was careful. Water would not be a problem with all the snow outside. They would be fine until the storm passed. He made a simple stew with salt pork and beans, letting it simmer while Zara slept. The baby finished nursing and fell asleep as well, still cradled in her mother's arms. Zachary watched them in the firelight, these two unexpected visitors who had literally blown into his life on the storm wind. He had been alone for so long. After his parents died and he sold the family farm back in Missouri, he had come west looking for something he could not quite name. Peace, maybe, or purpose. He had found neither, just hard work and isolation. Most days that suited him fine. But looking at Zara and her baby, something stirred in him that he had thought long dead. The storm blew for 3 days straight. Zachary had seen bad winters before, but this was different. The wind never seemed to stop, and the snow piled higher and higher against the cabin walls. By the second day, they had to dig out the door just to get outside for necessities. Zara recovered her strength slowly. The first full day, she mostly slept, waking only to feed Sarah and eat a little of the food Zachary prepared. By the second day, she was able to sit up for longer periods, though her movements were still weak and shaky. "I got frostbite on my toes," she told him on the afternoon of the second day, examining her feet with a worried expression. "2 of them are black." Zachary looked, his stomach sinking. She was right. The 2 smallest toes on her left foot were badly frostbitten, the tissue dark and damaged. "We need to keep them clean," he said. "When we can get to town, the doctor will know what to do." Zara nodded, but he could see the fear in her eyes. They both knew what frostbite that bad could mean. She might lose the toes. She might lose more. "Tell me about your aunt," Zachary said, trying to distract her. "The one you were traveling to see." Zara's face softened a bit. "Aunt Margaret, she is my mother's sister. She married a rancher and moved to Wyoming 20 years ago. I have not seen her since I was a child, but when I found myself in trouble, she was the only person I could think to turn to." "What kind of trouble?" Zachary asked gently. Zara was quiet for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to stroke Sarah's dark hair. The baby slept in a makeshift cradle Zachary had fashioned from a drawer and some blankets. "Sarah's father," she finally said. "He was a man I thought I knew. We were going to be married. But when I told him I was expecting, he changed, said terrible things. Gave me money and told me to get rid of her." Her voice broke on the last words, and Zachary felt anger flare hot in his chest. "What kind of man would do that? I refused, of course," Zara continued. "I left Philadelphia, went to stay with a friend in Ohio. But after Sarah was born, it became clear I could not stay there indefinitely. My friend was kind, but she had her own troubles. So I wrote to Aunt Margaret and she said to come. She said there was always room on the ranch for family." "That was brave of you," Zachary said. "Traveling all that way with a baby." Zara laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Brave or desperate, I am not sure which." "Both," Zachary said firmly. "Definitely both." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Zachary felt something pass between them, some understanding or connection. Zara smiled, a real smile this time, and it transformed her whole face. "You are very kind, Mr. Garrison," she said. "Zachary, please," he said. "I think we are past formalities considering." Her smile widened. "Zachary, then, and you must call me Zara." As the storm continued to rage outside, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Zachary took care of the heavy work, keeping the fire going, melting snow for water, cooking their meals. Zara cared for Sarah and helped where she could, though her injured foot made movement difficult. They talked, sharing stories to pass the long hours. Zara told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about her parents who had died in a cholera outbreak when she was 18. Zachary told her about Missouri, about his childhood on the farm, about the restlessness that had driven him west. "Why Cody?" Zara asked on the third day as the wind finally began to ease. "Why here specifically?" Zachary shrugged. "I heard there was good land to be had cheap. I wanted to build something of my own. I have got 160 acres here, bought it under the Homestead Act. I am supposed to improve it, build it up. So far all I have managed is this cabin and a corral." "It is a good cabin," Zara said. "Solid, warm, it saved our lives." "I suppose it did," Zachary agreed. That night the storm finally broke. The wind died to a whisper, and when Zachary opened the door the next morning, the world was buried under nearly 4 feet of fresh snow. The sun was just rising, painting the endless white landscape in shades of pink and gold. "It is beautiful," Zara said from behind him. She had hobbled to the door, leaning on a makeshift crutch Zachary had fashioned from a piece of firewood. "I have never seen anything like it." "It is deadly," Zachary said, but he could not deny the beauty. "We are going to have to dig out before we can go anywhere." "How far did you say it was to town?" "About 5 miles. But in this snow it might as well be 50, and you are in no condition to walk it." Zara's face fell. "My aunt will be worried. If she got my telegram, she knows I was supposed to arrive days ago." "As soon as the roads are passable, I will ride into town and send word to her," Zachary promised. "Let her know you are safe. But Zara, you need to see the doctor about your foot. The sooner the better." She nodded, absently rubbing her injured foot. Zachary had noticed her doing that more and more, and he suspected the pain was getting worse. It took another 2 days before Zachary deemed it safe enough to attempt the ride to Cody. He saddled his horse, a sturdy sorrel mare named Betsy, and packed supplies in case he ran into trouble. Zara stood in the doorway with Sarah bundled in her arms, watching him prepare. "Be careful," she said. "The snow is still deep." "I will be back before dark," Zachary promised. "Keep the fire going. There is plenty of wood stacked inside." The ride to Cody was treacherous. In places, the snow had drifted higher than Betsy's chest, and they had to detour around impassable sections. What should have taken an hour took nearly 4. By the time Zachary rode into town, his face was numb from the cold and his clothes were soaked through. Cody was still digging out from the storm. The main street was a canyon of snow, with paths carved between the buildings. Zachary headed straight for the telegraph office and sent a message to Margaret Reynolds at the Double R Ranch. Then he found the doctor. Dr. Samuel Hayes was a thin, serious man in his 50s who had practiced in Cody for the past decade. He listened to Zachary's description of Zara's condition with a deepening frown. "Sounds like severe frostbite," he said. "She needs to be seen immediately. Can you bring her to town?" "Not easily," Zachary said. "The roads are still bad and she has a baby. I was hoping you could come to my cabin." Dr. Hayes considered this. "How far?" 5 miles south. I can guide you. Let me get my things. We should go before it gets dark." They rode out together, Dr. Hayes on his big bay gelding with his medical bag secured behind the saddle. He was a better horseman than Zachary had expected, keeping pace even through the worst of the drifts. When they reached the cabin, Zara looked both relieved and frightened to see the doctor. Sarah started crying the moment the door opened, as if sensing the tension. "Miss Zimmerman," Dr. Hayes said, removing his hat. "I am Dr. Hayes. Mr. Garrison tells me you had some trouble with frostbite." Zara nodded, bouncing Sarah in an attempt to quiet her. "My left foot, 2 toes." "Let me have a look." Zachary took Sarah from Zara, freeing her to sit and remove her makeshift bandages. The doctor knelt and examined her foot carefully, his expression giving nothing away. After a long moment, he sat back. "I am not going to lie to you, Miss Zimmerman. Those 2 toes are going to have to come off. The tissue is dead. If we leave them, infection will set in and you could lose the whole foot or worse." Zara went pale, but she nodded. "When?" Now, while I am here. No sense waiting and risking more damage. Now, Zara's voice was faint. You mean, right now? It is a simple procedure, Dr. Hayes said, his tone professional but not unkind. I will give you something for the pain. Mr. Garrison can assist me. You will need to stay off the foot for several weeks afterward, but you should heal up fine. Zachary saw Zara's hands trembling. He shifted Sarah to one arm and reached out with his free hand, taking one of Zara's. It will be all right, he said. I will be right here. She looked up at him, and the trust in her eyes nearly undid him. All right, she whispered. All right. Dr. Hayes prepared his instruments while Zachary set up a workspace near the fire. Zara sat in Zachary's chair, her foot propped on a stool. The doctor gave her a healthy dose of laudanum, and soon her eyes glazed slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing. Mr. Garrison, I will need you to hold her steady, Dr. Hayes said. This will not take long, but it is not pleasant. Zachary had Sarah asleep in her makeshift cradle, swaddled tightly. He positioned himself behind Zara's chair, ready to hold her if she started to move. Dr. Hayes worked quickly and efficiently, and though Zara cried out once, the laudanum kept the worst of the pain at bay. Within 20 minutes it was done. 2 small toes wrapped in cloth, and Zara's foot bandaged neatly. Dr. Hayes gave Zachary instructions for care and left a bottle of laudanum for the pain. She should not try to walk for at least 2 weeks, the doctor said as he packed up his instruments. After that, short distances only until it fully heals. She is lucky, Mr. Garrison. Without your quick action, she would have lost much more than 2 toes. How much do I owe you? Zachary asked. $5 for the procedure, plus another $2 for the house call. Zachary paid him from his carefully hoarded savings, and the doctor rode back toward town before full dark. Alone again, Zachary checked on Zara. She had dozed off in the chair, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. He carefully lifted her and carried her to his bed, the only real bed in the cabin. She barely stirred, lost in the laudanum haze. Sarah woke soon after, hungry and fussing. Zachary changed her diaper, fumbling with the cloth and pins, then brought her to Zara. Even half asleep, Zara instinctively pulled her daughter close to nurse. Zachary turned away, giving them privacy, and began preparing supper. The next morning, Zara woke clear-headed but in obvious pain. Zachary gave her a small dose of laudanum, enough to take the edge off without making her too drowsy. Did you send word to my aunt? She asked. I did. I expect she will send someone to check on you as soon as the roads are clear enough for a wagon. Zara nodded, looking down at her bandaged foot. I suppose I will be stuck here for a while longer. You are welcome to stay as long as you need, Zachary said. Both of you. Something in his tone made Zara look up sharply. Their eyes met, and Zachary felt that connection again, stronger this time. He wondered if she felt it too. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. I do not know how I will ever repay you. No repayment necessary, Zachary said. I am just glad I was here. 2 days later, a wagon arrived from the Double R Ranch. The driver was a weathered cowhand named Pete, who looked like he had been riding since before the war. With him was a woman who could only be Margaret Reynolds. She was tall and robined, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that took in everything at once. The moment she saw Zara, her stern expression melted into pure relief. Zara, honey, she said, climbing down from the wagon with surprising agility. Oh, thank God you are all right. When you did not arrive, and then the storm, I thought, I feared the worst. Zara burst into tears, and the 2 women embraced. Sarah, sensing her mother's emotion, began to cry as well. Zachary stood back, feeling suddenly like an intruder in his own cabin. Margaret turned to him, her eyes sharp and assessing. You must be Zachary Garrison. Pete sent your telegram. I cannot thank you enough for taking care of my niece." "It was nothing," Zachary said, though they both knew it was everything. "The doctor says she cannot be moved for a couple more weeks," Margaret continued. "Would you be willing to let her stay here a bit longer? I would take her to the ranch, but the trip would be hard on her foot, and the ranch is another 10 miles past town." Zachary glanced at Zara, who was watching him with an expression he could not quite read. "Of course," he said. "She is welcome to stay as long as needed." Margaret nodded, satisfied. "I will leave Pete here to help out. He can bunk in the barn, keep you supplied with whatever you need from town. And I will pay you, of course, for your trouble." "That is not necessary," Zachary started to say, but Margaret cut him off with a wave of her hand. "It absolutely is necessary. You saved my niece's life and her daughter's life. The least I can do is make sure you are compensated for your hospitality." There was no arguing with her, Zachary could tell. He accepted with as much grace as he could muster. Pete unloaded supplies from the wagon, more food than Zachary usually saw in a month, along with proper baby things, bottles and blankets and little clothes. Margaret spent an hour with Zara, getting the full story of what had happened. When she finally prepared to leave, she hugged her niece again. "You are safe now," she said firmly. "Both of you. Once you are healed, you will come to the ranch and we will figure everything out. But there is no rush. You take your time and get well." After Margaret left, the cabin felt strangely quiet despite Pete's presence. The cowhand proved to be useful, helping with the heavier chores and making runs into Cody when needed. He was also tactful, spending most of his time in the barn and giving Zachary and Zara their privacy. The days fell into a new rhythm. Zara's foot healed slowly but steadily, and as her strength returned, she took over more of the household tasks. She cooked, better than Zachary had ever managed, turning his simple supplies into meals that made his mouth water. She mended his clothes, which had been falling apart for lack of attention. She sang to Sarah, sweet lullabies that filled the cabin with music, and they talked. Lord, how they talked! Zachary had not realized how starved he was for conversation until Zara came into his life. They discussed everything, books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they had for the future. Zara had wanted to be a teacher before her life went sideways. Zachary admitted he had always wanted to raise horses, something more elegant than his rough farm horses. "Why do you not?" Zara asked one evening as they sat by the fire. Sarah was asleep in her cradle and Pete had already retired to the barn. "Money, mostly," Zachary said. "Good breeding stock costs more than I have, and it would take years to build up a proper herd. But you have the land," Zara pointed out. "You have the knowledge. That is more than many people start with." "I suppose," Zachary said, but her words planted a seed in his mind. As the days passed, Zachary found himself increasingly aware of Zara's presence. The way she hummed while she worked. The soft sound of her breathing when she slept. The way she smiled at him when he did something thoughtful, like bringing in extra firewood before she had to ask or warming water for her to wash with. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him one morning as he watched her feed Sarah, the early light turning her hair to silk. He loved her. He loved the strength it had taken for her to survive what she had been through. He loved her devotion to her daughter. He loved the sound of her laugh and the quick intelligence in her eyes. But what could he offer her? He was just a homesteader, barely scraping by on a patch of Wyoming dirt. She came from Philadelphia society, had been engaged to a man wealthy enough to give her money to leave. Why would she want someone like him? Zara noticed his distraction. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No," Zachary said quickly, "just thinking." About what? He could not tell her the truth, so he said the first thing that came to mind. About spring. About what I need to get done once the weather breaks. It was not entirely a lie. Spring was coming, he could feel it in the air. The worst of winter was behind them, and soon the snow would start to melt. Soon Zara would be healed enough to travel. Soon she would leave. The thought made his chest ache. 2 weeks after Margaret's visit, Dr. Hayes came back to check on Zara's foot. He pronounced himself satisfied with her healing and gave her permission to start walking short distances. "You did well, Miss Zimmerman," he said. "No infection. Good healthy tissue forming. You should have full use of the foot, though you might find you limp a bit when you are tired." "Thank you, doctor," Zara said. After the doctor left, Zara insisted on cooking supper over Zachary's protests. She moved carefully, favoring her injured foot, but she was smiling. "It feels good to be useful again," she said. "I have been such a burden." "You have never been a burden," Zachary said firmly. She looked at him, and something in her expression made his heart race. "You are a good man, Zachary Garrison," she said softly. "The best man I have ever known." He wanted to kiss her. God, how he wanted to kiss her, but instead he just nodded and turned away, afraid of what she might see in his eyes. That night, after they had eaten and cleaned up, after Sarah was asleep and the cabin was quiet, Zara sat down across from Zachary at the table. "I need to talk to you about something," she said. Zachary's stomach dropped. Here it was. She was going to say she was ready to leave, ready to go to her aunt's ranch. "All right," he said, keeping his voice steady. Zara took a deep breath. "These past weeks staying here with you, they have been, I do not know how to say this properly." "Just say it," Zachary said, though he was not sure he wanted to hear it. "They have been the happiest I have been in a very long time," Zara said in a rush. "Maybe ever. And I know that sounds ridiculous considering everything, but it is true. I feel safe here. I feel at home." Zachary stared at her, afraid to believe what he was hearing. "Zara, I know I should go to my aunt's ranch," she continued. "I know that was the plan, but I do not want to. Is that terrible? To say that out loud?" "No," Zachary said, finding his voice. "No, it is not terrible." "I want to stay here," Zara said, her eyes meeting his. "With you, if you will have us. I know it is asking a lot. You did not sign up for a ready-made family. But Sarah and I, we could help. I can cook and keep house, and when she is older she can help too. We would not be a burden, I promise." Zachary reached across the table and took her hands in his. "Zara, you could never be a burden, either of you. The truth is, I do not want you to leave. I have been dreading the day you were well enough to go." Her eyes widened. "Really, really. I love having you here. I love hearing you sing. I love watching you with Sarah. I love talking to you. I just love you." The words were out before he could stop them, and Zachary felt his face flush hot. But Zara was smiling, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too," she whispered. "Is that crazy? We have only known each other a few weeks." "Probably," Zachary admitted. "But I do not care." He stood and moved around the table, and Zara stood to meet him. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like finding something he had been searching for his whole life without knowing it. She melted against him, her arms coming up around his neck, and he held her like she was precious, because she was. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zara laughed through her tears. "What are we going to do?" she asked. "I think we should get married," Zachary said. "That is, if you will have me. I know I am not much, just a homesteader with more dreams than sense. But I promise I will take care of you and Sarah. I will work hard and build something good for us, and I will love you both for the rest of my life." "Yes," Zara said immediately. "Yes, absolutely yes." They kissed again, longer this time, and Zachary felt like he could float right up off the floor. When Sarah woke crying a few minutes later, they broke apart laughing. Zara went to tend to her daughter, their daughter now, and Zachary stood in the center of his cabin feeling like the luckiest man in Wyoming. The next morning, Pete rode to town and returned with Margaret Reynolds. Zachary and Zara sat together on the cabin's single bench, holding hands as they explained their decision to her. Margaret looked between them, her expression unreadable. For a long moment she said nothing, and Zachary felt his heart sink. Then she smiled, a real smile that lit up her weathered face. "Well," she said, "this is unexpected, but I cannot say I am entirely surprised. Pete said you two had a certain look about you." "Are you upset?" Zara asked anxiously. "Upset? Honey, I am relieved. I was worried about you coming to the ranch, worried about how you would fit in, how Sarah would be treated. But this, a husband who clearly adores you, a man who proved he would risk his own life to save yours, how could I object?" "Then you approve?" Zachary asked. "I do. On one condition." Zachary tensed. "What condition?" "That you let me throw you a proper wedding. Nothing fancy, just family and friends at the ranch. Zara deserves a real celebration, and so do you." Relief flooded through Zachary. "That sounds perfect." They were married 3 weeks later, on the first truly warm day of spring. The Double R Ranch house was packed with people, cowboys and neighbors and townspeople who had heard the story of the Snowstorm rescue and wanted to celebrate the happy ending. Zara wore a dress that Margaret had saved from her own wedding, altered to fit Zara's slider frame. She looked beautiful, her dark hair pinned up, her eyes bright with happiness. Zachary wore his best suit, brushed and pressed until it looked almost new. The minister from Cody performed the ceremony in Margaret's parlor, and when he pronounced them man and wife, the room erupted in cheers. Zachary kissed his bride, his wife, and felt his heart swell with a joy he had never known. They spent their wedding night at the ranch, in a guest room Margaret had prepared for them. Pete had agreed to watch Sarah for the night, giving them privacy. It was the first time they had truly been alone since the night Zara had arrived on his doorstep, and they took advantage of it, learning each other slowly and sweetly. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Zara's head on his chest, Zachary felt at peace in a way he never had before. He had spent so long searching for purpose, for meaning, for a reason to be in Wyoming. And all along, the answer had been waiting for him, delivered by a blizzard and divine providence. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked sleepily. "About how lucky I am," Zachary said. "About how that storm brought me everything I did not know I needed." Zara tilted her head up to kiss his jaw. "I am the lucky one," she said. "You saved my life. You saved Sarah's life. You gave us a home and a future. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." "You already deserve everything good in this world," Zachary said fiercely. "Do not ever think otherwise." They moved back to Zachary's cabin after the wedding, though Margaret made them promise to visit often and to call on her if they needed anything. The cabin felt different now, warmer somehow, truly a home instead of just a shelter. Zachary threw himself into improving the property with renewed energy. He repaired the corral and built a larger barn. He cleared more land and put in a kitchen garden that Zara attended with Sarah propped nearby. The baby was growing fast, already trying to sit up on her own, her dark eyes taking in everything around her. That summer, Margaret gifted them a breeding pair of fine horses, a bay mare and a black stallion with excellent bloodlines. "For your horse ranch," she said with a wink. Zachary was overwhelmed. The horses alone were worth more than he made in a year, but Margaret waved off his thanks. "You are family now," she said. "Family helps family." True to his word to Zara, Zachary worked harder than he ever had. He took on jobs in town when he could, saving every penny toward building their future. Zara helped in every way she could, taking in sewing and selling eggs and butter to neighbors. Together, they slowly built something real and lasting. Sarah took her first steps on a crisp October morning, tottering across the cabin floor into Zara's waiting arms. Zachary watched with a grin, marveling at how much had changed in less than a year. This little girl who was not his by blood had become his daughter in every way that mattered. He loved her fierce, protective love that surprised him with its intensity. That winter was milder than the previous one, though they still had snow. Zachary made sure they were well stocked with supplies long before the first flake fell. He was not taking any chances, not with his family's safety. On Christmas morning, Zara gave him news that filled him with equal parts joy and terror. She was expecting. They were going to have a baby, a brother or sister for Sarah. "Are you happy?" she asked, watching his face anxiously. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Zachary said, pulling her into his arms. "Terrified might be closer." Zara laughed. "I am terrified too, but we will figure it out together, just like we have figured out everything else." The baby, a boy they named Zachary Jr. but called Zeke, was born the following summer during a thunderstorm that reminded Zachary eerily of the blizzard that had brought Zara into his life. Dr. Hayes delivered the baby at the cabin, with Margaret in attendance to help. Holding his son for the first time, his actual blood son, Zachary was surprised to find that his love for Zeke was no different from his love for Sarah. They were both his children, both precious beyond measure. "We make beautiful babies," Zara said from the bed, exhausted but glowing. "You make beautiful babies," Zachary corrected. "I just provide assistance." She laughed and held out her arms for Zeke. Sarah, nearly 2 years old now, stood next to the bed on her tiptoes trying to see her new brother. "Baby," she said solemnly. "My baby." "Our baby," Zara corrected gently. "Your little brother." Life settled into a happy rhythm after that. The horse breeding business grew slowly but steadily. Word spread about the quality of Zachary's stock, and buyers started coming from as far away as Montana to look at his horses. With the money they made, Zachary expanded the ranch, buying another 80 acres from a neighbor who was moving back east. Sarah grew into a bright, fearless little girl who followed Zachary everywhere when she was not helping her mother. Zeke was a happy baby who rarely cried and seemed fascinated by everything around him. Watching them grow, Zachary sometimes had to pinch himself to believe this was his life. One evening, when Sarah was 4 and Zeke was almost 2, Zachary and Zara sat on the porch they had added to the cabin the previous fall. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The children were asleep inside, worn out from a day of playing. "Do you ever think about that night?" Zara asked. "The night of the storm, all the time," Zachary admitted. "I think about what would have happened if the wind had been blowing a different direction, if I had not heard Sarah crying. I think about all the ways it could have gone wrong." "But it did not go wrong," Zara said, taking his hand. "It went exactly right. Against all odds, in the middle of a blizzard, we found each other. That has to mean something." "It means everything," Zachary said. "You mean everything. This whole life we have built, you and me and the kids, it is more than I ever dreamed of having." "We are not done building yet," Zara said with a smile. "I am thinking a bigger house might be in order soon. The cabin is getting a bit cramped." Zachary laughed. "A bigger house it is." "Whatever you want." "I just want you," Zara said, leaning against him. "I just want this forever." "Forever sounds perfect," Zachary agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. From inside the cabin, one of the children made a small sound in their sleep, and Zachary felt his heart swell with contentment. This was his life now, his beautiful, unexpected, miraculous life. 2 years later, Zara gave birth to twin girls they named Zoe and Lily. The house Zachary had built was finished just in time. A proper 2-story with 4 bedrooms and a real kitchen. It sat on a hill overlooking the rest of the property, with a view that stretched for miles. Sarah, now 6, took her role as big sister seriously, always helping with the babies. Zeke, at 4, was more interested in following Zachary to the barn and learning about the horses. The twins were identical, with Zara's dark hair and Zachary's green eyes, and they seemed to communicate in a language only they understood. Margaret visited often, delighting in her great-nieces and nephews. She had aged in the years since Zara first came to Wyoming, moving slower and complaining about her joints, but her mind was as sharp as ever. "You have built something good here," she told Zachary one afternoon as they watched the children play in the yard. "Zara is happy. That is all I ever wanted for her." "I am the one who should be thanking you," Zachary said. "If you had not sent her to Wyoming, if you had not been here for her when she needed family, none of this would exist." "Maybe," Margaret said. "Or maybe you two were always meant to find each other and everything else was just details." Zachary liked that idea. He liked thinking that somewhere in the grand design of the universe, he and Zara had been destined to meet, to fall in love, to build this life together. The horse ranch prospered beyond Zachary's wildest dreams. By the time Sarah turned 10, they had a reputation throughout Wyoming and the surrounding territories for breeding quality horses. Buyers came from hundreds of miles away, and Zachary was able to hire help to manage the day-to-day work. He never forgot where he came from, though, never forgot those early days of struggle and uncertainty. He made sure Sarah and Zeke and the twins understood the value of hard work, made them help with chores appropriate to their ages. Zara ran the household with quiet efficiency, somehow managing to keep track of 4 children while also helping with the business side of the ranch. She kept the books, corresponded with buyers, and handled negotiations with a skill that surprised some of the old-timers who were not used to dealing with women in business. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zachary took Zara back to the original cabin. They had kept it standing, using it mainly for storage now, but it held too many memories to tear down. "Remember when this felt huge?" Zara said, laughing as she looked around the single room. "I cannot believe we all fit in here." "It was never about the size," Zachary said. "It was about what happened here. This is where we became a family." They had brought a blanket and some food, planning to have a picnic inside the cabin like they were young again. Sitting on the floor where Zachary had once nursed Zara back from the brink of death, they toasted their decade together with elderberry wine Zara had made. 10 years, Zara said wonderingly. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday that I woke up to find you holding Sarah." "The best 10 years of my life," Zachary said. "Here is to the next 50. 50, Zara teased. "Only 50, as many as we get," Zachary amended. "However long we have, it will not be enough." She kissed him then, sweet and deep, and they made love in the cabin where their story had begun, wrapped in blankets as the afternoon light streamed through the windows. Sarah turned 18 in 1895, a beautiful young woman who had inherited Zara's intelligence and Zachary's stubbornness. She had no interest in marriage yet, much more focused on her plan to attend a teaching college in Cheyenne. Zachary was proud of her ambition, even as part of him mourned her leaving. Zeke was 16, tall and strong, with a natural way with horses that made Zachary's heart swell. The boy could gentle the wildest colt, and buyers specifically asked for horses Zeke had trained. The twins, 12 now and still inseparable, were a whirlwind of energy and mischief. They kept Zara on her toes and made Zachary laugh with their antics. Margaret had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving the Double R Ranch to Zara. They had sold it to a young family looking to make their start in Wyoming, using the money to further expand their own operation and set up trust funds for the children's education. One evening, as Zachary and Zara sat on their porch watching the sunset, a sight they had enjoyed thousands of times over the years, Zachary reflected on how far they had come. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Marrying me instead of going to live with your aunt? You could have had an easier life." Zara looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Easier, maybe. Better. Never. Zachary, you gave me everything that matters. You gave me love and safety and a home. You gave our children a father who adores them. You built this whole life for us. How could I ever regret that?" "I just want to make sure you are happy," Zachary said. "I am the happiest woman in Wyoming," Zara said firmly. "Probably in the whole country. Do not ever doubt that." As the years continued to pass, their family grew even larger. Sarah eventually did marry, to a kind young lawyer she met in Cheyenne, and gave them 3 grandchildren. Zeke married at 22 to the daughter of a neighboring rancher and took over much of the day-to-day running of the horse ranch as Zachary began to slow down. The twins both married in a double wedding that was the talk of Cody for years afterward. Zoe married a banker and moved to Cheyenne to be near Sarah. Lily married a cowhand who worked on the ranch and built a house on the property, staying close to home. Through it all, Zachary and Zara remained the center of their ever-expanding family. They were the ones everyone came to for advice, for comfort, for celebration. Their home was always full of children and grandchildren, of laughter and love. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a party that packed the community hall in Cody. People came from all over to celebrate the couple whose love story had become local legend. The cowboy who had saved a woman and her baby from a blizzard, who had married her weeks later, who had built an empire from nothing but determination and love. Zachary gave a speech, though public speaking had never been his strong suit. He talked about that night in 1883, about hearing a baby's cry through a storm. He talked about finding Zara half frozen in the snow and knowing instantly that his life had just changed forever. "I thought I was saving her," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But the truth is, she saved me. She gave me purpose and meaning and a reason to build something lasting. Everything good in my life stems from that one stormy night when God or fate or whatever you want to call it brought her to my door." There was not a dry eye in the house. Zara stood and kissed him, and the room erupted in applause. That night, alone in their bedroom, Zara rested her head on Zachary's chest just like she had on their wedding night so many years ago. "We made it," she said softly. 30 years, 4 children, 9 grandchildren and counting. A ranch that employs half the county. We made it." "We did," Zachary agreed, stroking her hair. It was more gray than dark now, and his own had gone completely white. His hands were gnarled with arthritis and his back gave him trouble on cold mornings. But none of that mattered. What mattered was this: Zara in his arms, their family thriving, their love as strong as ever. "I would do it all again," Zara said. "Every moment, every hardship, every joy. I would do it all exactly the same." "So would I," Zachary said. "Even the scary parts." "Especially the scary parts, because they led us here." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, just as they had for 30 years and would for all the years to come. Zachary lived to see his 82nd birthday, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. He passed peacefully in his sleep, with Zara holding his hand, in the big house he had built for her on the hill. Zara followed him 2 years later, as if she could not bear to be apart from him for long. She spent her final years surrounded by family, telling stories about the early days, about the snowstorm and the tiny cabin and the cowboy who had saved her life. The horse ranch continued to thrive under Zeke's management, and then his sons after him. The original cabin was preserved as a family shrine, a reminder of where it all began. Generations of Garrison children learned to ride in the same corral Zachary had built with his own hands. And in Cody, Wyoming, people still told the story of the blizzard of 1883, of the crying baby on the doorstep, of the woman who had nearly died in the snow, and of the cowboy who had loved them both. It became the kind of story that was passed down through families, romanticized and embellished with each telling, but always true in the ways that mattered. Because at its heart, it was a simple story. A story about two people who found each other against impossible odds. About love that bloomed in the harshest conditions and grew stronger with each passing year. About a family built on a foundation of courage and devotion and unwavering commitment. It was the story of Zachary and Zara, the cowboy and the woman from the storm, and the love that saved them both.